Hello everybody, Darren here, and welcome to a rather experimental mod for Total War Warhammer 2, simply called Population Beta. This mod basically adds an economic population value to settlements, which is categorized by race and later divided up into a class-based manpower system which you draw from in order to recruit and replenish units. In this video, I'm going to walk you through how it works and explore whether or not a population system can really fit Total War Warhammer. But before I do, this video is sponsored by Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for creative and curious people. Skillshare offers classes ranging from creative writing, graphic design, video editing, and even Lua scripting, which is how the mod in this video was created, through Lua. I've used it personally when I wanted to learn more advanced techniques for video editing. I took the class Animating with Ease in After Effects by Jake Bartlett, which was excellent because the class also provides art assets and project files which are huge time savers. Skillshare is curated specifically for learning, meaning that there's no ads and they're always launching new premium classes, workshops, as well as their new live classes. Skillshare Premium is less than $10 a month with an annual subscription, and the first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description will get a free trial of premium membership so you can explore your creativity. Thank you to Skillshare. So, before we get into the details of the mod, remember that this mod is a beta, and the author Lorgal is experimenting with it quite a lot, so it really feels like just a test version for now. It's stable, and you can actually turn it on and off and your save should work, but in my time playing with it, it's been completely rebalanced and had new things introduced in just the few days it's been on the workshop. So, I don't recommend it for playing out a big long campaign, but I really love the idea of the mod, so I wanted to give it a showcase and talk about it. So first things first, I'll tell you what's going on here with the UI. So here we are, turn 1 of a Dwarfs campaign where we just have one settlement, Karaz-e-Karak. Here we have 44,000 Dwarves and no other races living here. Hovering over the population, we can see they are currently being treated as citizens. Now, depending on the race, they may be citizens, tolerated, slaves, or set to be exterminated. For instance, if we had men in our settlement, they'd be tolerated, but if we had greenskins, they'd be exterminated over time. The next icon is workers at 100%. It means this entire race contributes its population to the workforce. This is different for each race. For instance, men contribute 90% of their population to the workforce, whereas Skaven only contribute 40%. So what do I mean by contribute to the workforce? Well, over on the details panel, we can see the percentage of workers we have relative to the capacity of the settlement. So what this means is that based on the settlement size, how many workers do you have? As the dwarfs here, we have 44,000 population, which is 43% of the 103,000 we could have. This means that we have a meager amount of workers, which is causing a debuff to income, recruitment, and construction. So, in super basic terms, our settlement is just a little bit too big for the amount of people in it. So things are taking longer to do and our economy is suffering slightly. So what we need to do is grow our population. Now, on starting the game, we can see our growth rate is actually in the negative. It's negative 3%. And this is because we are currently starving. The population mod adds its own version of food to every province, and most growth and settlement buildings will now give you food. This is completely different than the Skaven food mechanic, by the way. The dwarfs purposefully start underpopulated, and I think most races start either hungry or starving, just because you basically need to build at least one growth building, and for most starting factions you just don't have one yet. This mod has tried not to impact buildings or the start pods at all, because it wants to be compatible with mods like Grimhammer or Radius or anything else. Anyways, you can see on the details panel that we're starving, and with our current food we have a sustainable population of 10,500. More food means more growth, and if your public order is high and corruption is low, then you'll actually yield more food as well. If you want, you can actually export all of your food or half your food to other provinces in need, allowing you to sort of grow above your limit. So to grab some food for ourselves, we'll quickly secure the Pillars of Grungi. Now we can see that food is listed as hungry and no longer starving, so not perfect, but much better than where we were. At the hungry level, we've actually halted the decline of our population, but it's also not growing. So this is a nice example of how food is treated on the province level, but population is treated per settlement. If we check the Pillars of Grungi, we can see there are 24,000 greenskins living here and no dwarfs. They're listed in red because, as we can see, they're set for the extermination camp, and this means that none of them are going to be working, obviously. Because of that, we have 0 workers here. This means no money, double construction times, and 4 extra turns for recruitment. So a seriously nerfed way to play Total War Warhammer here. I'd have to actually send my army back to Karaz-e-Karak to get new units in a timely fashion. Over the next 3 or 4 turns, the greenskin population will dwindle and our dwarf population begins to pop up. And this is due to migration. So migration occurs naturally into bordering towns that you own, as well as through ports. Basically, big populations migrate out to less populated settlements, so eventually things sort of even out between your towns. If you want, you can actually force migrate your population by expelling them or exterminating them. So if you had men in your settlement, you might want to exterminate them anyway, as your dwarves actually work better than men. But each race also has a benefit, and when you have a certain amount of them, you get it. So for dwarves, you get a 25% bonus to income, which is a pretty big boon. Skaven get extra food, and men get reduced construction time. So there are pros and cons to maintaining different populations. The last thing to touch on within the settlements is dissidence. Now, I'm not entirely sure what the cause of it is, but basically your population has a certain amount of dissidence, and this creates a negative to public order. It seems different races have different amounts of it, and it can become more of an issue if you start having food problems. So that's basically it for settlements. Now, it's worth noting that I did play as the dwarves, who are just heavily incentivized to play tall, staying put, growing their population, while other factions like the Empire start with much more freedom. So for comparison, we can check Balthazar Gelt's start. Here, Gelt has nearly 50,000 population. His recruitable manpower is nearly triple what it is for the dwarves, and he already has over 50% workers in Faldorf, meaning he has a gold benefit and a 25% reduced building time. So it's not all negatives and debuffs. The dwarves are just a little bit underpopulated. We have one final topic, and it's a big one. It's the recruitable manpower in the top left. So depending on your race, a certain percentage of your total global population become the hard limit of what units you can recruit and replenish. Again, for the dwarves, it's pretty constrained. Of your total population, the militia class is 2%, elders is 1%, slayers is 0.5%, and engineers is 1%. You'll notice as well that manpower population is global. Of course, Warhammer lets you recruit globally, so manpower kind of needed to be just accessed everywhere. Now, the different classes of population relate to what you can recruit. Dwarf warriors, for instance, come from militia, while artillery units come from the engineers. The numbers aren't 1-to-1, however. Right now it takes 150 militia to create a 100-man squad of dwarf warriors. Now, I asked the mod creator why did he do it this way, and he stated that he wants the mod to be compatible with other overhauls. You can't fix the numbers directly, as they could change depending on what you're playing. So, as you may have guessed, you recruit units from this manpower pool, and if you run out of manpower, then you're going to create a unit with just one person in it, and you'll have to wait until it replenishes. Replenishment also uses your population, so every loss in battle now has a real impact. Your units are going to be pulling from your city's population as well as your manpower, so it hurts you both economically, as towns begin to have less and less people in them, and militarily, as you have to wait longer and longer to get more troops back. This mod certainly is not for everyone, but for me, it's just what I'd like to see in Warhammer. It adds that human element. There's something about seeing multiple races coexist in a settlement, seeing entire populations being wiped out, and then also seeing the decline in a settlement as you recruit units, knowing that your people are filling your armies. There's just something that adds a whole layer of immersion where the world starts to feel a little bit more lived in and believable. Maybe for many people it just doesn't matter, but for me, the more connection I can build between my armies and the settlements, the better. Because then they kind of start to feel like real people coming from a real place, and it really matters when they die, both in terms of gameplay and immersion. When I lost the town to the Greenskins, I knew I'd only got a few turns left to get there before the population would be executed. It was of course important for gameplay to keep my population alive, but there was just this horrible guilt knowing that they were going to die because I didn't defend them, or I didn't force them to migrate maybe just before they got invaded. So, does the AI play by these rules? Yes and no. This mod is compatible with an API mod called Mod Configuration Tool Reborn that actually lets you adjust settings in mods that are compatible. In the population mod, you can actually toggle the ability for the AI to play by your rules or not. Of course, the AI was never built with this in mind, so if cities run out of manpower, then it's still trying to field armies, but they're basically just going to have one man in them and be replenishing. Now, you can actually adjust a setting to give them a boost to that replenishment if you want, and you can actually boost yourself too if you prefer it. If you'd rather that the AI just field armies as normal, then you can disable the AI hire mode, and they'll recruit pretty much how they normally do. They'll still drain cities' population, but even when it runs out, they'll keep recruiting just fine, and that's actually how it works in Divide et Impera for Rome 2. So that's it for the population system as it stands so far. Now, I really like the idea of it, but it is fairly limited right now, as it's sort of a foundation for something to be built on top of it. In Divide et Impera, almost all buildings have some sort of effect on the population, and things like raiding can even affect it too, but what's really great in DEI is the regional recruitment system, and this would be the best thing ever for me in Total War Warhammer. Basically, it would mean that if you had a dwarf city with a bunch of high elves living in it, you'd be able to recruit 2 or 3 units from that race as auxiliaries. Maybe you could build an auxiliary barracks that would maintain some of the growth of the foreign population and allow you to recruit something like auxiliary dragon princes. Then you'd have high elf units adorned with your dwarven colors that would feel akin to kind of mercenaries, maybe with lower leadership and increased upkeep. Anyways, a man can dream, but I basically just want a DEI in Warhammer. The Grimhammer mod is pretty close, but with population on top of it, regional recruitment, maybe the GCCM maps as well, you've pretty much got the Warhammer I always wanted. And that's it for the video. Let me know what you think of the population mod. Is it something you care about in fantasy Total War settings? And if you want me to cover more Total War Warhammer mods in future, just hit that like button. Maybe let me know what mods you'd like to see in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Hey guys, thank you very much for watching, and remember, if you want to support this series directly, you can click the join button to become a channel member. Doing so will get your name in the credits, as well as loyalty badges and emotes to use in the comments. If you don't see the join button, it means the video has been copyright claimed, but you can still join from the channel page on desktop. You can also link your account to our Discord to get a special role on there that'll give you access to the Senate House and a few other perks.